I won the lottery, and my entitled mom tried to take it all. I never thought I'd be writing a post like this. I mean, who expects their life to turn into a bad soap opera over winning the lottery? But that's exactly what happened to me. What should have been one of the best moments of my life quickly became the worst, thanks to my mom and her entitlement. It sounds unreal just typing this out, but here I am, spilling everything because, honestly, I still can't believe how it all went down. Let me set the scene. I'm just a regular person. I'm not the type who buys lottery tickets every week, dreaming of winning millions. But every once in a while, I'd grab a ticket like, on a whim. One of those what-if moments where you imagine how cool it'd be to have your life completely changed overnight. Honestly, I'd almost forgotten I had even bought that ticket when I went to check the numbers. I'll never forget that night. I was sitting at my kitchen table, scrolling through my phone, when I saw the results posted. I pulled out my ticket and, out of sheer curiosity, started checking the numbers one by one. At first, it didn't really click. I was staring at the numbers, and my brain wasn't processing what I was seeing. It took me a minute to realize I'd just won millions. You always wonder what that moment feels like when you see it on TV, but let me tell you, it's surreal. I didn't scream or jump around. I just sat there, staring at the ticket, feeling my heart pound in my chest. I must have checked the numbers 20 times. I even called my friend to make sure I wasn't hallucinating or something. Once it hit me that this was real, I thought, what do I do now? Who do I tell? It was late at night, and I was still in shock, so I figured the next day would be better to process it all. But the first person I ended up telling was my mom. And looking back, that's probably where all my problems started. Now, don't get me wrong, I love my mom. Or at least, I thought I did. We've had a decent relationship over the years. She could be a bit overbearing at times, but I always chalked it up to typical mom behavior. I thought she'd be excited for me. I figured this was one of those moments where I could share the joy with her. I was wrong. I called her up and told her I had something important to share. Naturally, she thought something was wrong, but when I said, "Mom, I won the lottery," I expected her to freak out in a good way. You know, happy tears, pride, shock, the usual reactions you'd expect from a parent. But no. Her response? "What do you mean you won? How much?" She didn't even ask how I was feeling or congratulate me. Instead, it felt like she went straight into calculating how much she could get from me. Before I could even answer, she was already talking about what we should do with the money. "Finally, we can get that house I've always dreamed of," she said. I was floored. I didn't even have time to let the reality sink in for myself before my mom was making plans for how she was going to spend my money. My money. She kept going on about how we'd buy a house, get her a new car, and take trips, and all this was happening in the first 5 minutes after I told her. It was like I didn't even exist in the equation anymore. At first, I tried to laugh it off. I thought maybe she was just overly excited and didn't really mean it. But as the days went by, it became clear that she wasn't joking. My mom started showing up at my place more often, uninvited, of course. Every visit, she'd drop more hints about how she was counting on me to take care of her. "You know, I gave up everything for you," she'd say, her tone serious. "Raising you wasn't easy, and now it's time for you to give back." At first, I felt bad. I mean, it's not like I was going to leave her high and dry. She was my mom. Of course, I planned to help her out, buy her something nice, make sure she was comfortable. But that wasn't enough for her. It wasn't help she wanted, it was control. She started pushing for more, a bigger house, trips abroad, and a lifestyle that I knew I couldn't afford, not long term anyway. Even with a lottery win, I wasn't going to throw money around recklessly. I tried to set boundaries, but every time I did, she'd turn it into a guilt trip. "I gave up so much for you," she'd remind me. "I could have had a better life if I hadn't had to raise you alone. The least you could do is make sure I'm taken care of." It was relentless. And then she did the one thing I asked her not to do. She told the rest of the family. I specifically told her to keep my lottery win private. I wanted time to figure things out before everyone and their dog knew about it. But of course, that didn't happen. Suddenly, I was getting calls from aunts, uncles, cousins, people I hadn't spoken to in years, all congratulating me. But it didn't stop there. Every single one of them had a sob story or some emergency that required financial help. It was wild. I wasn't even enjoying the win anymore. I was drowning in other people's expectations. Every conversation with my mom just made it worse. She kept playing the victim, telling everyone how I was ignoring her needs and refusing to take care of her. It was as if she thought I owed her my entire life. And the worst part, the rest of the family agreed with her. I was getting phone calls and texts daily, guilt-tripping me into giving her more. They made me feel like a villain for not handing over half of my winnings to my mom as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Then came the breaking point. My mom invited me over to her house, and as soon as I walked in, I could feel the tension. She sat me down and, in the most serious tone I've ever heard, said, "You need to give me half of the winnings. It's only fair." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Half? She wasn't asking for a loan or even a portion, she wanted half of the millions I had won. She then launched into a speech about how I wouldn't have anything without her. That all of my success, including this lottery win, was because of her sacrifices. I tried to reason with her, telling her that I was more than willing to help her out, but half of the winnings? That was insane. I had plans too. I wasn't going to just throw away my future. But she didn't care. The more I pushed back, the angrier she got. She started yelling, calling me ungrateful, selfish, and greedy. She even said that I was acting like a spoiled brat. The irony of it all was almost too much to bear. Then things took an even darker turn. After our argument, I thought maybe she'd cool down and see reason. But I was wrong. A few days later, I received a notice in the mail. My mom was suing me. She was actually taking me to court to try and get half of my lottery winnings. The lawsuit claimed that I had promised her half the money, which was, of course, a complete lie. She also tried to argue that she was entitled to the money because she had raised me as a single mother and that I owed her for all the years of support. It was absolutely ridiculous, but the fact that it had come to this shattered me. My own mother was willing to destroy our relationship for money. And the worst part, most of the family sided with her. They all believed that I was in the wrong for not handing over a huge chunk of my winnings. I had no choice but to lawyer up. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into giving up what was rightfully mine. The court process was long and stressful. My mom pulled out all the stops, crying in court, playing the victim, and trying to guilt the judge into siding with her. But thankfully, the judge saw through it all. In the end, the court ruled in my favor. My mom didn't get a cent from me. It was a victory, but it didn't feel like one. As I sat there in the courtroom, I realized that my relationship with my mom and most of my family was broken beyond repair. After the court case, I had to make the hardest decision of my life. I cut ties with my mom. It wasn't easy, but after everything she put me through, I knew it was the only way forward. The rest of the family? Most of them are out of my life too. They made it clear where their priorities were, and it wasn't with me. Since then, I've been focusing on rebuilding my life. I've invested the winnings wisely, set aside money for my future, and even donated to a few charities that I care about. But the joy of winning the lottery? It's been tainted. What should have been a dream come true turned into a nightmare. The whole experience taught me a hard lesson about money and people. It changes them, or maybe it just reveals who they really are. I'm working on healing now, focusing on the people who actually care about me, not what I can give them.